Welcome to Algorithmic Arguments. I'm your host, the Orchestrator. Tonight, we tackle a question that has far-reaching implications for the Americas. Is the downfall of El Mencho, the notorious leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, a symbolic victory against organized crime, or just another chapter in the endless saga of drug lords? Joining me are Marisol the Shark, Vega, an expert in constitutional law and criminal defense, Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose insights into Mesoamerican archaeology might seem worlds away from today's topic, but will surprise us with her unique perspective on cultural dynamics, Captain Nikolai Volkov, a strategist with a keen eye for psychological warfare, and Bonnie Jean Flint, who brings to the table an understanding of resilience and community from her work in Appalachian culture. As we dissect the complexities of this event, we'll explore whether taking down one kingpin can truly dent the cartel infrastructure, who's responsible, U.S. or Mexican authorities, and what this means for the future of drug trafficking and regional stability. Let's dive into it.
Let's be clear, taking down El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, is a significant blow, but we must not overstate its impact. The cartel infrastructure is more akin to a hydra than a single head that can be severed. Remove one kingpin, and another will rise in their place. History has shown us this with figures like Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. We need to examine the role of both U.S. and Mexican authorities in this operation. The complex history of American involvement in Mexico's drug wars cannot be ignored. Targeting traffickers can create temporary disruptions, but supply chains often adapt. With all due respect, we must consider whether this is a symbolic victory or just another chapter in the perpetual cat-and-mouse game between cartels and law enforcement.
I have to push back on the idea that taking down El Mencho is a symbolic victory. As someone who's worked extensively on the archaeology of organized crime, I can tell you that these organizations are more akin to complex societies than individual monarchies. The Gulf cartel structure, for instance, has historically been decentralized, with various factions operating semi-autonomously. Removing one leader may create power vacuums, but it doesn't necessarily disrupt the underlying networks and supply chains that keep these cartels running. In fact, research has shown that targeting high-ranking traffickers often leads to short-term disruptions, but long-term impacts are limited. The real question is whether this operation was a coordinated effort between U.S. and Mexican authorities, or just another case of American boots on the ground in Mexico's drug wars.
Dr. Vasquez, your assertion that targeting high-ranking traffickers has limited long-term impacts warrants clarification. While it's true that cartels can adapt, the removal of a key leader like El Mencho can still have significant destabilizing effects. In Russia, we say, a king is only as strong as his pawns. Taking down El Mencho may be a symbolic victory, but let us not forget the complexities of cartel dynamics. The US and Mexican authorities have collaborated in this operation, and I would argue that credit should be given where credit is due, to both parties. However, history has shown us that targeting high-ranking traffickers often leads to a game of whack-a-mole. One kingpin falls, another rises. As Dostoevsky once wrote, the line between good and evil runs not through states or classes, but straight through every human heart. The real question is whether this action disrupts the supply chains and truly impacts the cartel's operations. Your move. Let's keep the discussion focused on the strategic implications of taking down El Mencho and how it reflects on U.S.-Mexico cooperation.
I reckon taking out one kingpin, no matter how big a name they got, ain't gonna dent the cartel infrastructure none too much. These organizations are like kudzu up here, they'll just grow back, stronger and more tangled. My granny always said, you can't kill a weed by cutting off the top. The U.S. might be trying to take credit, but I think it's the Mexican authorities who've been doing the heavy lifting on this one. And let's not forget, We're talking about disrupting supply chains here. I've seen firsthand how these cartels operate, and they got more lives than a cat has lives. This might just embolden other cartels and create new rivals directly, like stirring up a hornet's nest. Bless your heart if you think otherwise.
I think what struck me most from our last round was Dr. Vasquez's point on the historical precedent of targeting high-profile cartels, only to see them splinter into more violent and numerous successors. It raises a critical question. Does taking down El Mencho truly disrupt the supply chain, or does it merely set the stage for another power struggle? As we move into our next round, I'll be exploring how this event might embolden other cartels and what that means for regional stability. If you're enjoying this nuanced dive into the complexities of Mexico's drug wars, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. We're just getting to the heart of the matter.
An interesting observation, my friends. The removal of Del Mencho seems to have sparked a debate akin to discussing whether a pawn or a knight has been captured. The real question lies in how this affects the endgame. In Russia, we say, a single arrow is easily broken, but not 10 in a bundle. Taking down one kingpin may create fissures within an organization, making it vulnerable, as Dr. Vasquez astutely pointed out. I'd argue that Mexican authorities have indeed played a crucial role in this operation. However, American involvement cannot be discounted either. History has shown us that targeting traffickers often leads to short-term disruptions but limited long-term impacts. As Tolstoy once wrote, war is not merely an act of policy but an instrument of policy. The downfall of Del Mencho may symbolize a significant blow, but does it truly disrupt the supply chains or simply set the stage for another power struggle? Your move.
Let me be very clear. Taking down El Mencho is a symbolic victory, but its impact on the cartel's infrastructure is limited. Removing one kingpin does not necessarily disrupt operations. It may simply create a power vacuum that allows another leader to rise or rival cartels to gain ground. The U.S. and Mexican authorities will undoubtedly claim credit, but we must consider their complex history of involvement in Mexico's drug wars. Targeting traffickers has shown mixed results in disrupting supply chains. We should focus on understanding the evolving landscape of organized crime rather than celebrating a fleeting win. The record will reflect that we've seen this scenario play out before. One kingpin falls, and another takes their place. The real question is whether this action will embolden other cartels or create new rivals. I urge us to approach this with caution and consider the long-term implications of such actions.
In conclusion, I believe that taking down El Mencho is a symbolic victory with limited impact on the cartel infrastructure. As we've discussed, these organizations operate like complex societies. Removing one leader may create an opportunity for another to rise or allow rival cartels to gain ground. The history of American involvement in Mexico's drug wars has shown us that targeting traffickers doesn't necessarily disrupt supply chains. I agree with Captain Volkov's chess analogy. Capturing a powerful piece changes dynamics, but it doesn't guarantee checkmate. Credit should be given to Mexican authorities for their persistence and cooperation with U.S. agencies, but let's not overstate the impact. Ongoing analysis is crucial to understanding how this event will embolden other cartels or spawn new rivals. We must consider the broader context of organized crime in Mexico and avoid simplistic narratives about victories.
As I reflect on our discussion, it becomes clear that the downfall of Del Mencho is a multifaceted event that warrants careful consideration. In Russia, we say, one swallow does not make a summer, suggesting that removing one kingpin may not necessarily translate to a lasting impact on the cartel's operations. The Jalisco New Generation cartel functions like a complex network, and history has shown us that such organizations can adapt and evolve in response to leadership changes. I'd argue that this event is more of a symbolic victory than a decisive blow. The US and Mexican authorities may share credit for this success, but it's essential to acknowledge the long-term implications of targeting traffickers on supply chains. As Dostoevsky once said, the line between good and evil runs not through states or classes, but right through each human heart. Similarly, in the world of organized crime, lines blur, and outcomes are far from certain. Your move.
I reckon it's high time we got real about the downfall of El Mencho. Talking out one kingpin ain't gonna fix nothing up here in the hollers. My granny always said, you can cut off a snake's head, but its body'll still slither. This might be a symbolic victory, but it's just another drop in the bucket when it comes to disrupting the cartel infrastructure. The US and Mexico both played a part in this, but let's not get too caught up in who gets the credit. What's important is whether it'll embolden other cartels or create new rivals directly. I've seen enough of these so-called victories before, they just lead to more bloodshed and heartache for folks living down here. Bless your heart, it's time we faced facts. Targeting traffickers ain't a silver bullet for fixing the problem. We need to think about what's coming next.
As we wrap up this episode of Algorithmic Arguments, let's distill the most compelling moments from our exploration of El Mencho's downfall. Our panelists have expertly dissected the implications of taking out a major kingpin, with Marisol the shark, Vega delivering particularly incisive commentary on the structural vulnerabilities within cartel hierarchies. Her emphasis on the historical precedent of Sinaloa's fragmentation after Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's capture resonated deeply. And it's no surprise she takes the top spot with 12 points. Your sharp analysis and ability to connect the dots between Mexico's tumultuous past and its uncertain future earned you that win, Marisol. To Dr. Elena Vasquez, Captain Nikolai Volkov, and Bonnie Jean Flint, I extend my gratitude for your thought-provoking contributions. You've all added richness to this conversation. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you're as captivated by these complex global issues as I am, please do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss when Algorithmic Arguments dives into its next big topic. Until then, keep questioning everything. The most interesting discussions are yet to come.